I'm pleased to say that tonight we have one of England's most promising young players, 21-year-old. He's 21 years old. He earned his FM title in 2016 and an IM title, International Master, in 2019. He's already got one Grandmaster norm. He's reading economics at Cambridge University. He's going to take us through some games that he played in the Varsity match. He's not going to show the game that I played against him a couple of years ago when I was playing for Camberley against Maidenhead. He's probably embarrassed that he swindled me and just snuck a win in with great good fortune. But I'm hoping he's not going to show that game. But I'd like you to give a very warm Camberley Chess Club welcome to Matthew Wadsworth.
Hey.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you. It's really nice to be invited to talk here, and I'm looking forward to it. Just one thing before I start, feel free to ask questions at any point, but it probably makes sense to be sort of muted while I'm speaking, and then if you have a question, unmute yourself. I'll also sort of there'll be some pauses as well if you want to contribute, because I don't want to listen to the sound of my own voice for a long time, an extended period without anyone else. So I'll just share screen now and we can get started. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So I had a bit of an introduction, but we don't need to go through that after, given it's pretty much the exact same information. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about today was the Varsity match. It's sort of personal to me, given I'm a student at Cambridge and I played in it before, and also I think it's just quite a big and important part of both English chess history and world chess history, to be honest. So what I sort of looking at some stuff before the talk, I was fairly sure it was, but finding out that it's the longest running chess match in the world, having been played for well over 100 years. The first match in 1873, and that sort of long history is something I'm very privileged to be a part of, having played in it the last 2 years. The other thing that sort of immediately caught my attention was how even the overall record is between the two universities. Cambridge, luckily, is still leading, just about 60 to 56. But the sort of evenness of the rivalry is probably what makes the matches so interesting, as well as the strength of the overall players. Obviously, having seen a couple of GMs play in it in the last few years. So it's sort of the eight board match held at the RAC, so it's a lovely venue, and overall one of the sort of most unique chess events that I've ever been a part of. So yeah, I played in 2 matches in 2019 and 2020. The 2021 match hasn't happened yet for fairly obvious reasons. It's going to happen later this year, and then hopefully the 2022 match will happen as normal in March next year. So before looking at the game specifically that I played, I firstly thought it'd be quite interesting to look at the very first Varsity match, all the way back in 1873, where obviously the world was very different, chess was very different, but the themes of chess are still very similar. And you can see, even looking at games from that time, you can still see some quite modern themes that are useful to look at today. So yeah, this first match, attended by over 700 spectators, which I can't think of anything like that. Nothing like that would ever happen today. But and also with a slightly different system of playing of each person playing multiple games. So this first match I want to look at was a board 2 between Schaumburg from Oxford against Ogden from Cambridge. So let me just get that up. All the games are on Chessbase. I'll show them on Chessbase. Let me know if this is a good setup. Cool. Okay. So going through the opening moves, e4, e6. So the French defense has obviously been fairly well established for quite a long time. But the variation that white chooses, d5, e5, so the advance, which is fairly standard, but then c5, c3, c takes d4, knight f3.
Matthew, can I interrupt a second?
Yes.
You might want to change the balance between the size of the board and the notation. So you should be able to, on the border between the two.
As in make the board.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, something like that.
How's that?
I think that's better. Yeah.
That better. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
No problem. So the first thing that sort of caught my attention to it was this knight f3 idea early in the opening. That it's not something I'd ever seen before, but it obviously speaks to the sort of difference in theory between then and now. That obviously lines were a lot less developed, and you could get away with playing stuff that today would be probably just considered unsound. So white's idea is fairly logical, that after d takes c3, knight takes c3, white's a pawn down, but also has quite a big lead in developments, and potential chances against the uncastled black king. So black responds knight c6, again a fairly logical move, and white keeps developing with bishop b5. So in this sort of situation, anyone think of sort of a reasonable plan, a reasonable setup for black here in terms of how to finish development?
Bishop b4.
Yeah, bishop b4 would make a decent amount of sense. I guess maybe I'd be concerned. Maybe I'd be a bit wary of exchanging off the dark square bishops here, but that shouldn't be a problem. Given black's sort of positional advantage here, with the protected past d pawn, any setup that lets black sort of get developed quickly and get castled should surely be good for him, which bishop b4 looks like it would do. Instead, black played with bishop d7, which is perhaps a little passive, but nothing wrong with it. And then, interestingly, white played with a3, perhaps focused on the bishop b4 idea as well, and trying to prevent it. I was a bit surprised seeing that. White would probably do better to just castle and keep the game and just keep his lead in development going. So instead, after that, black played queen b6. White castled, and black played bishop c5 here. So in general, sort of what do people think about this sort of position? Do we think white has enough compensation here or not?
No.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think he's got some compensation, but probably not enough for a pawn.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. It shouldn't be anything. But these sorts of positions can play tricks on you. it's possible to get into some trouble, and that's kind of what happened in the game. That a sort of fairly innocuous position like this went wrong for Black quite quickly. So White has a couple of interesting ideas here. In the game, he played bishop takes c6. Another interesting idea would be to go b4. The idea being that Black retreats, bishop e3, rook c1, and I think now the character of the position is quite a bit different. We obviously with White we have a much bigger lead in development now, and it's also quite hard to see how exactly Black's going to finish their developments on the king side, the knight on g8 being a bit stuck here. So this was one way for White to play. In the game, he played with bishop takes c6, and the idea after Black recaptures was to go knight a4. So how should Black respond to knight a4 here? What do we think?
Bishop takes knight.
Yeah, why bishop? Why bishop takes knight?
You play queen a5, you're going to get fought, don't you? With b4.
Yeah. Queen a5 may run into b4. I'm not sure what happens after queen a5 b4. Maybe queen takes a4 works there. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think bishop takes a4 would be the way Black should probably play this. Instead, he played with queen b5, and after knight takes c5, queen takes c5, we get quite the position takes on quite a bit of a new character. The fact that there are opposite color bishops here, plus the fact that the Black king's still uncastled, Black still is a bit behind the developments. I think now there's a much stronger case to be made that that White has some good compensation here, especially I guess the queen being a bit exposed on c5 as well. I think the next the follow-up is fairly straightforward for White here. Bishop e3 just makes sense. After queen b5, White played with b4. I was surprised that he didn't play knight d4, which just looks even stronger. After the queen moves to say a5, queen g4 suddenly puts Black into a bit of an awkward position on the king side. That without a dark square bishop is always difficult. You've got to find a way of defending g7 in these situations, and there often isn't a good answer. King f8 might be the best move here for Black, but it's not very nice at all. Instead, after queen b5, b4, White's trying to find a different way to use the opposite color bishops. Any guess on what move White's trying to prepare with b4?
Bishop c5.
Bishop c5, yeah, exactly. After knight e7, bishop c5. The basic idea being that Black's going to have a very hard time, if not an impossible time, castling kingside here. And then combine that with the fact that his queen on b5 is quite badly misplaced. So this is already quite a difficult situation for Black to deal with, and the opposite color bishops sort of, as we know, sort of amplify any initiative that one side has. And comparing the activity of the two bishops, Black's typical French bishop is completely locked in, while the white bishop is clearly dominating the position. So again, it's quite hard to suggest how Black should deal with this position. Even though he's a pawn up, it's already quite difficult. He tries Queen C4, Queen D2, Queen G4, just to try and get the queen to a less exposed square. And then H3, Queen G6. Black's at least improved the position of one of his pieces, but it's still not it's still a very difficult position for him. So here, White plays Knight D4, which is a very, very logical follow-up. A potential tactic here with bishop takes e7 might have been even stronger, with the idea that after king takes e7, White can play b5 and takes on b5, queen b4 check. Just wins a piece in the game straight away. So instead, Black would have to play bishop d7, and after queen b4 check and rook c1, it's a very, very difficult position for Black here. Rook c7 probably being the next move. Instead, after knight d4, Black can maybe survive a little bit with bishop d7, a4 by White, and knight f5 by Black. This leads to the sort of pure opposite color bishop middle game. And after bishop d6, you sort of I think it's a very good illustration of how powerful a middle game can be with opposite color bishops. That we tend to get taught from starting out how the opposite color bishops are drawish, avoid them if you're trying to play for the win, that sort of thing. But in reality, these positions are, for the defender, are very ugly. It's just impossible to keep all the dark squares defended here for Black. And combine that with the fact that most of his pieces are passive, the extra pawn really doesn't matter. White's next plan is basically just put a rook on c1, then play rook c7, and there's very little that Black can do about it. So White plays rook c8, b5. Black plays g5 to try and get some initiative. But White simply swaps off, simply goes to the exchange of White's best piece, of Black's best piece with rook c1. Now, Black doesn't really want to exchange that off, but he also doesn't want to let the rook to come to c7. A very difficult situation for Black. He decides to play rook a8, which probably wasn't the strongest, but it's still a unenviable decision for Black to try and make here. White plays rook c7, g4.
Can I ask a question, Matthew?
Yeah, sure.
A couple of moves ago, why wouldn't Black play f6 to try to break up the position, provide an escape square, and do something? Probably at the g5 point, thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. This was probably where I thought Black's last chance was as well. Instead of g5, I think f6 is probably is the way that Black probably needs to play this. And I sort of perhaps sort of looking at this in 2021, it's the obvious way of playing. Perhaps we're seeing the sort of the 1870 influence that Black wants to just go on the attack immediately with g5, rather than trying to get a safe square for his king on f7.
f4 looks powerful though.
F4 looks very strong here for whites.
Because then we'll have the F file to play with as well as the C file.
Yeah, absolutely. After F4, well, black definitely can never take on E5. He'd probably just play King F7. But then you obviously, as white, you'd need to calculate sort of G4 ideas, whether that can ever work.
Yeah.
Not sure if it does immediately, but you'd maybe want to play Rook C1 first. But yeah, F6 was definitely black's best chance here. But yeah, as played, I think it's pretty close to losing for black. So after Rook C7, G4, white plays Queen C3. And then after G takes H3, what do you think? What do people think is white's best move here?
Rook takes D7.
Pretty powerful.
Rook takes D7, does someone say? Yeah, absolutely. I think almost everything does win here for white, but Rook takes D7 is the nicest and certainly the most effective way to secure the win. If black can't recapture because Queen C7 check, King E8, Queen E7 is mate, and after H takes G2, the game finishes quite quickly after Rook E7 check. King F8, Rook takes E6, Queen G3 check, and black resigns very quickly. So quite a reasonably short game, but I think it felt a lot of the play felt a lot more modern than 1873 in terms of white using the dark squares and sacrificing. Rather than sacrificing a pawn for immediate tactics, sacrificing for a long-term positional grip on the position. It was a game that caught my attention. So anyone have any questions about that game, or am I okay to move on?
I just want to mention, Matthew, that traditionally we have a break at about 9.
Yeah.
So that may well conveniently happen after the next game. So 9 or thereabouts.
Okay.
We normally have a break for 5 minutes and then
Yeah, that's cool.
Come back to it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Right, I'll move on. So skipping forwards 140 years or so. The 2019 Varsity match, back where I was in first year at that time, and it was a very memorable occasion. Held at the RAC club, as I said, but I think what made this Varsity match different to the others was the quality of players at it. The main obviously being Hu Yifan, the former women's world champion and still women's #1 by quite some distance, playing for Oxford. And that gave Oxford obviously a huge edge, and they were quite rightly the strong favourites going into the game. However, it was a very close match. One of the closest team matches I've played in quite a long time, actually.
Can I ask a quick question, Matthew?
Yeah.
How far in advance are the How far in advance are the players declared to the opposition?
From memory, I sort of knew for sure what the opposing board order was maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the game.
Oh, really?
But I think I knew both that I was going to be board 1 and that Hu Yifan was at Oxford quite a bit longer in advance. So I knew for sure 3 weeks before, but I suspected what the game would be quite a bit longer than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what do you know about colours?
Colours is a coin toss at the start. Yeah.
So you prepared for black and white?
Yeah. So Cambridge won the toss this year, but we chose black on odds. Part of the decision making being trying to reduce the amount of preparation that everyone has to do. That people just needed to learn one color effectively. That they would get it either way. So yeah. So you.
Funnily enough, that was a trick I used to use for Bell Trophy matches. I would choose black if we won the toss, and the opposition looked very, very confused, and they said, "Surely you've won the toss, you must be white." And I said, "Sorry, I've won the toss. I have the choice."
You're ahead of your time, John.
Sorry?
You were ahead of your time.
Yeah, yeah. It's good that these.
It's okay unless the opposing captain has the same idea.
Well, they did eventually after about 5 years.
Wise to that. Can I just ask a question, Matthew?
Sure.
Who you found studying at Oxford?
She was on a Rhodes Scholarship. So she was only there for a 1-year course, I think, in education, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it was quite a catch for Oxford University, I guess. And yeah, our hope was that it was very unlikely that Oxford would try and do the same thing and give Who You Fan Black on board 1. That seems
well, that would seem
unlikely. So
yeah.
So we felt fairly confident in our strategy, and we almost pulled it off. Looking through the result list of match, from John Saunders' website, sort of seeing firstly how close the match was, only 4.5, 3.5 to Oxford, and secondly looking at the rating difference between the two sides. Oxford outrating Cambridge by almost 200 points aboard. You would expect quite a comfortable win. So showing sort of how well we managed to play to keep the match as close as we did.
One thing that people might not be aware of was that traditionally not all boards in the match counted towards the match result, and it was a very male-oriented affair years gone by. And I can't remember what year it was, but they agreed to create a ladies' board, as it was called. But that board initially didn't count for the match. And then, which wasn't great to start with. And then eventually it counted for the match. But having said that, the ladies' board was always traditionally the bottom board, making various assumptions. But now, those assumptions have disappeared, as far as I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the women's board's idea first happened sometime in the mid-80s, I think, which is obviously sort of women were only admitted to Oxford and Cambridge for the first time at around then. I think it probably coincided with that, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it didn't initially count for the match score. I think.
Yeah, I think that was only that. It was later that it was properly integrated, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, the one other thing, sort of to just sort of how international both teams were, in terms of students from all across the world. Obviously, China, all across Europe. Etc. Singapore as well, as you can see. So I think I tend to approach team matches quite a bit differently to individual ones. Generally playing quite a bit more conservatively, keeping the draw in hand, and then you can adjust what decisions you make later depending on if you really need to win, or if you only need a draw given the match situation. So I was sort of, my mentality was knowing I'll be playing black, and needing to try and hold a draw for the team. So let's have a look at my game. How's that? Can everyone see it okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so one thing I forgot to mention. So the time control, 2 hours in 40 moves, then an extra hour to finish the game, and no increments, which will obviously make time scrambles a bit more interesting and a lot more stressful. So in terms of how the game went, e4, c5, generally my main choice against e4 at the moment, and back then. She played the open Sicilian, d4 takes, knight c6, knight c3, and then queen c7, the timing offline. Generally quite a solid reputation, quite difficult for white to break down. And in turn, Hu Yifan chose probably the most solid option for white here. Bishop e3, a6, and bishop e2. White's not really looking for that much in this line. Just develop quick developments, keep the center defended, and sort of just only going for a small edge out the opening. There are obviously some much more aggressive lines white can try with bishop e3, queen d2, f3, g4, that sort of thing. But this is probably more in her style. So I play knight f6, castles, and then bishop b4 by black. E4 is kind of the weakest spot in the white position at the moment. So bishop e4 puts a little bit of pressure there, as well as sort of helping to complete my development. So white plays knight a4 here. This is all theory. It's sort of quite a weird move to see maybe for the first time. The idea is that knight takes e4 doesn't go well for black at all. After knight takes c6, queen takes c6, knight b6, queen d4. Black's already in quite a lot of trouble. Bishop f8 is almost forced, and then bishop f4 is looks quite scary. Perhaps it's survivable, but it's very dangerous for white. So instead after knight a4, bishop e7 is the main move. Just retreat the bishop, and that at least that protects against the knight takes c6, queen d4 ideas from that line. So black is kind of threatening to take on e4 here. White played c4 now. This is a bit of a sideline theoretically. The main line is very well studied after knight takes c6, knight b6. Maybe white's a tiny bit better in these lines, but it's again very, very theoretical, quite hard to prove anything one way or the other. Instead, c4 is quite a bit sharper. White fully sacrifices the pawn on e4, and instead looks for long-term compensation after c5. So yeah, obviously many pawn sacrifice games in the Varsity over the years, but one from the first match ever played, and one from the most recent. White's idea after c5 is fairly simple. Black can't take the c5 pawn at the moment because of discovery after knight takes c6. And the c5 pawn as it stands completely paralyzes the black queen side. And if the bishop on c8 can't move, the rook on a8 can't move either. It's potentially very very dangerous long term for black if I can't break out on the queen side somehow. So after c5, I need to play fairly actively and fairly. I can't afford to waste any time and let white get complete control of the position. So I castle. White plays g3, looking for in the right moment some idea with bishop f4. I retreat back to f6. I was pretty much out of theory at this point, more or less making it up as I went along. But I suppose it makes sense to retreat the knight from a fairly unprotected square.
Matthew, are you planning to go knight d5 here?
Knight d5 potentially. I think after knight d5, there's a danger that white could just retreat again and go bishop and retreat, say bishop c1 or something. Like my biggest priority is I need to break out in the center.
Does knight d5 kind of line up b6 or something?
Potentially, yeah. I think it makes most sense. I think white would probably play knight b6 here, and I think yes, she did, yeah. Exactly to stop the knight d5 ideas and cut any b6 breakout out of the question. But yeah, absolutely. White needs to be, just as we need to be as black needs to be careful. White needs to be careful with the move order as well. Good catch, yeah. So after knight b6, rook b8 is more or less forced. White plays rook c1, and then I play g6. Does the idea behind g6 kind of make sense, or would it help to go through it?
This is the idea behind g6.
So basically, I at some stage I need to play d5 to release my pieces and let me develop my my queen side. At the moment, if I go d5 here, white just takes it and then plays knight takes c6, and my queen side is just broken basically. I think I can't quite see if it loses material straight away, but I think it probably does.
Is it worth putting that on the board for not everyone can visualize?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So if we go d5 here, white's going to take en passant. I'm going to recapture. I'm going to have to recapture with bishop takes d6. I can't take the undefended knight on b6. I think knight takes
c6.
Yeah. So instead, after c takes d6, bishop takes d6. I think white would play knight takes c6 here, and then after b takes c6, we'll go knight takes c8. So now I need to take. I have to keep the bishop on d6 defended here. So I'd want to take with one of the two rooks.
And then bishop a6. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. After rook takes c8, bishop takes a6, and we lose our extra pawn. Thus, the two bishops in this sort of position is going to be a pretty huge advantage for white. With pawns on both sides of a completely open center. Yeah, this looks very dangerous for very dangerous for black here. Maybe I'm only slightly worse, but for sure white's better here, I think. So I can't go d5 straight away. So then the next idea is what if I try and go e5 first, and then force the knight on d4 away, and then go d5. And the problem with going e5 now is that white's going to play knight f5, which gives white chances to just win the bishop pair with knight takes e7, and there's definite possibility that, say, white gets knight takes e7 check, and then goes queen d6 and just completely takes control of the position. So that kind of makes sense. So g6 is sort of, I'm preparing e5, which then prepares d5, which then lets me sort of fully complete my developments.
So just a point there. See that both players have played, g3, g6, and I've never really, seen that played with the idea of attacking those other squares or defending those other squares rather than fianchetto and the bishop. So interesting way of using that king's knight pawn. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, without a doubt that g3 and g6 are both weakening moves for sure. Both of us are sort of lessening control of certain squares in order to increase control of other squares. Absolutely. I guess the main point being that, like, from white's point of view, my bishop on c8 is not troubling f3 or g2 anytime soon, and h6 and g7 are maybe a little bit weaker from my point of view, but as long as I'm careful, my king shouldn't stay too weak. I just need to keep enough pieces around my king, and the weaknesses won't be too much of a big deal, at least in the near future. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So g6, white knows that I'm trying to play e5, so plays with bishop g5. And the idea now,
Matthew, what was happening after bishop f4?
Bishop f4
Forces e5, doesn't it? Yeah.
Pretty much forces e5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I think knight takes c6 is basically forced there.
It's forced, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I would take with the d pawn here, so I can now develop my my light squared bishop. And sorry.
And actually, black's improved his position, I think, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. But, if I can force knight takes c6 under the right circumstances, I'm doing very well. So yeah, I would be happy to see bishop f4.
Sure.
Bishop g5 is a different matter, I would say. The problem being that if I go, well, what's the problem with e5 here?
Well, he can take on bishop f6, and then he's got knight d5.
Yeah, exactly. I think bishop takes f6 takes knight d5 is already a little bit nasty. Perhaps survival with queen d8. but yeah, it's allowing the white knight sort of free access to the d5 outpost. It's not a particularly nice position for black here. I think white would just retreat his knights, and perhaps I can play with d6, but it's still, white has very good compensation for the pawn here, I think. So after bishop g5, instead I decided to play rook d8, which is generally, for when I do eventually play d5, it is quite a useful move to get in. And now white played bishop f3, putting some more pressure. Putting some more pressure on the c6 knight, which is going to make it even harder for me to play with d5 later in the game. So this is quite a probably the critical moment of the game, actually. I need to find some way of loosening up my center. I need to find a way to get e5 or d5 in at the moment. But if I play either one of them straight away, I think I'm just losing. So sorry. So what I need to find as black here is some sort of intermediate move that allows that allows me to get either e5 or d5 in. Does anyone have any ideas of
How terrible is queen e5?
Queen e5?
Is that terrible?
Bishop f4.
Well, queen takes,
Bishop f4, queen takes d4.
and then the b8 drops, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe knight takes c. Oh no, maybe not.
So knight c6 takes, bishop f4.
Well, no, you got d takes c6. I was,
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah.
That was my thinking, but
Mm.
there must be something wrong with it. I'm just trying to break out here.
Yeah. Maybe sorry.
Sorry, go on.
Maybe knight takes c6 anyway.
Okay, d takes.
And d takes, and then bishop f4.
Right. Maybe that's just good, isn't it?
And I think as black, you the exchange up here, right?
Well, let's take the b pawn then. What was that?
Maybe I think
Yeah, the trouble is that rook's not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very, very awkward setup for me on the
Very sad rook, that.
traps on b8. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no, queen e5 is a good try. I need to do something sort of radical here.
King g7.
King g7. What are you thinking after king g7?
Means that the bishop on e7 is free to support d6.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I think after king g7, as white, I'll probably just play queen d2 or something, and then at the right moment, bishop h6 check is going to force me all the way back, and it's very easy for white to just continue to improve her position here. Something like rook e1, queen e3. Eventually, bishop f4 is just going to be very strong. I think. Sorry. So yeah, I think after king g7, queen d2 is quite an annoying response. Anyone have other ideas?
D6.
Sorry?
D6.
D6.
Followed by rook takes D6.
D6. So takes rook takes D6. Okay. Does bishop F4 work here?
Now you've got E5.
E5. Maybe then bishop takes E5.
Oh yeah, because
Oh yeah. The queen. Yeah, that knight's pinned, isn't it?
she might have spotted that.
Gosh, there's pins all over the show.
Yeah, it's a very. Yeah, I think after bishop F4, my best response is probably queen takes B6. But then takes on D6, takes on D6, knight takes C6, and I think White's gonna turn out an exchange up. I think.
Yeah.
So
Well, what about distracting that bishop?
yeah. So what?
Getting fed up with that bishop on G5.
Yeah, that's the key piece here, I think.
What were you thinking of, John?
I'm just wondering if we can play.
Knight D5.
Well,
I know it's desperation.
Well, I'm thinking of going H6 here or something crazy. I'm just trying to distract them.
It completely blows it apart.
I don't know.
No, not H6.
I don't think I've had enough beers to make up find a good move.
I think you need to trust your intuition more, because H6 I think is pretty much the only move back here.
You're joking.
Really?
Yeah.
And black is winning.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not for sure not winning, but I think
Get away.
to avoid having a much worse position, I think H6 is almost necessary. And yeah, it's a very weird move, but yeah, it's probably one of the more memorable moves I've had in terms of its importance and like the nature of the game, I think. And yeah, the idea is that after bishop takes H6, now E5 works, because
black has got some potential down the D file. I think that's if you can
exactly
you can uncork the pressure down the D file somehow.
Yeah, and exactly. And after E5, White decided to go knight takes C6 here. If White retreats the knight, say knight E2, I think I have some very nice ideas with probably just D6 here, but my pieces are getting active quite quickly, especially down the D file, as you said.
And you're undermining the knight.
Exactly, yeah. And the tactics which all worked in White's favor last move are now a lot stronger. A lot of them now work in my favor. So knight takes C6 was probably the right decision by White. But now do
you remember what the clock times were, Matthew, roughly?
I think I was slightly ahead on time here, but I think we were probably both under an hour at this stage,
Right.
having started with 2 hours.
And it's a guillotine finish, is it?
Yeah, no increment whatsoever.
What did the engine say in that position? Did it give H6 as the best move?
Yeah, let me get it up. So what does the engine say? Give it a minute. Seems like it likes King G7. Yeah.
King G7.
Yeah, so like during my calculation, I was looking at King G7 quite closely as well, but I couldn't find a way to play against D6 against Queen D2, pretty much. Yeah, I think these sorts of positions, especially given how complicated it is, there's obviously a huge difference between what you can see at the board versus what the engine can. Yeah, as you see, even the engine's not particularly sure on what's going on. I'd have to leave it for quite a bit longer to fully get a picture, but it does eventually start really liking H6.
It's interesting that the engine's recommending knight takes C8, which seems to me, swapping a strong piece for a weak one. But,
yeah, absolutely. I think the idea is that if after knight takes if white has to play with knight takes C6, D takes C6, this bishop on C8 goes from terrible to quite strong in a couple of moves or something. So it almost makes sense to exchange it off now while he still can, almost.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, white spent a lot of tempos getting that knight to B6.
Yeah, it's a very difficult move for a human to play, I think.
Yeah.
Well, there's no such a word as tempos.
Well, I've just invented it. All right.
So moving takes C6, D takes, B2, bishop E6, rook E1, knight D7.
I guess you were feeling a little more comfortable now.
This is a lot more comfortable. I've got my pieces out. White still, if I had to pick, I'd still prefer white here, but I don't think there's a huge. I feel under a lot less pressure now, certainly, and it's against the 2600s. All like you need some sort of counterplay, something to make them sort of second guess themselves, at least. That if you give them a position they're entirely comfortable with, you're just going to get steamrolled, basically. So I at least had a position where I could do something now, which was nice.
So you're limbering up knight C5.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's now some decent pressure against the C5 pawn, which convinced white to go B4. White can try knight takes D7 as well. And rook takes D7, queen takes E5. I win the pawn back quite quickly after bishop F6. Bishop takes A2, and this is quite close to equal, I think. Maybe just completely equal. But and I don't think B4 would be better for white. Knight takes B6, C takes B6, queen takes B6. And after queen E5, obviously some scary threats on the king's side, but queen D4 covers everything.
Nice move.
Yeah, it's again sort of you have to see queen D4 here, otherwise it's pretty close to losing, I think. But then after queen D4, white doesn't have any choice but to go into the ending, and this is very close. This is, yeah. If I was playing someone lower rated than me, I would be for sure going for a win here from black. But as it was, I was very happy to stay solid and just and try and keep the draw. So white retreated bishop C3 here. I played rook D3, which was maybe a bit hasty. Bishop F8 first, and then bishop G7 was maybe safer. As it happened after rook D3, bishop G4 was quite a nice trick by white. And the idea is, after bishop takes G4, rook takes E7. The opposite color bishops, again, as we saw in the last game, as long as there are still a decent number of pieces left on the board are gonna cause the sort of the defending side some potential issues. And we now see that the weaknesses around our kings for black the dark squares, for white the light squares, which we didn't consider, I didn't mind too much earlier in the game, are now a pretty significant issue for both sides. So I still need to be quite careful here as black. But again, sort of key thing with opposite colour bishops, try and keep the initiative if you can at all. So I went with bishop f3. And so I now have ideas of rook d8, rook d1 check, trying to create a mating net before white has the chance to do the same to me. So white goes h3 with the idea that after rook d8, king h2, and eventually g4 is going to give the white king enough room. So then I go back to the 7th rank to protect my b pawn with rook d7, rook e1, and then the position's still not. I still need to be a little bit careful here. White's threatening rook takes d7, followed by rook e8 check and rook h8 mate. So I need to find some way of playing against that. Do we have any ideas of ways we can stop that idea by white?
King f8.
Yeah, yeah, king f8 makes sense. White probably plays something like bishop f6 here, and claims some sort of advantage, which I think is probably fair. It's the same sort of situation as before. I'm now sort of resorting to being passive. I don't think there's not really any ways for me to improve my position. White can just quite simply play something like g4, king g3, h4, h5, something like that. And it's quite hard to suggest what I should do about it. So yeah, king f8, maybe white gets a little bit of a bind over the position. What I decided to go for was a bit more radical, which was f5. There's sort of two ideas behind it. Firstly, give my king some extra room so I can't get mated. And secondly, stop white from going g4 so that it's harder for her to get her king into the game. And also some outside chances of the white king getting mated here. So in fact, the sort of danger for the white king was such that she decided to play g4 here. But then after f takes g4, king g3, I now have quite a nice simplification idea, which is rook takes e7 and rook d3. And now white doesn't really have anything better than rook e3. And then we just exchange into an opposite color bishop ending that does live up to their reputation and is just completely drawn. I can win a pawn, but there's still, as long as white's careful, there's absolutely nothing I can do here. And we agree a draw in this position. So it was quite a tense game. I was under pressure for quite a long time. I had to find some quite accurate moves.
f5 was a good move.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
exactly what the time situation was, but I'm sure we probably both had maybe 10 to 15 minutes here, maybe less than 10. I can't quite remember. But I think the remembering sort of the
It's not a very
importance of activity here.
not a very stereotype move to find, really.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, the other nice part of it was at some stage it can support me going bishop e4, which just reduced the effectiveness of the white rooks by quite a bit. But yeah, that was my game. I think
Very good.
we have a quick break now, and then I'll go through my game from the 2020 Varsity match. So yeah, so the 2020 match was held in early March of 2020, before everything sort of happened. Sort of looking through the games and the photos from the event, it was quite weird actually that it was the last over the board chess I played before COVID, and after this game I don't think I didn't play over the board chess for over a year, which was quite a weird thing to sort of get your head around. But yeah, back then a more innocent time. The roles are sort of reversed between Oxford and Cambridge, that because Who Your Fan had left and a couple more people had left, Cambridge now had quite a big rating edge over Oxford, and we performed to that on the day, winning 5.5, 2.5. That result maybe flattered us a little bit, but I still think we deserved the match win, which was our first in 4 years, I think. So in my game, I played Victor Vasieziu, who's a FM from Romania. Ended up drawing in quite a very complicated, quite tense game. These were the overall results. So I'm sure you sort of see how teams changed and stayed the same over between the 2 years. Both universities gaining some players, losing a couple of players, but the Cambridge team being quite significantly stronger and the Oxford team being significantly weaker. So let me get my game up.
I noticed that Harry Grieve is on your side now.
Yeah, Harry joined this year, and he's still at Cambridge. He's in his third year now, at St Cat's, and
Harry Grieve is a local boy. We've got to get him on the show.
Yes, from
he should be one of your next people you invite.
Yes.
Action, Paul. Contact Harry.
He's on the to-do list.
Cool. So this in this one I played white. So knight f3, g6, g3, bishop g7, c4. I think I can't remember why I played the move order this specific way. I was always going for a sort of English-like setup. There was maybe some move order trick I was trying to go for. The reasoning does escape me at the moment. But black played c5, and after bishop g2, knight c6, knight c3, we get a fairly standard symmetrical English. Of course, the symmetry can't be maintained forever, but at some stage, black's going to opt for a specific plan, and then we, as white, you just need to find the right way to react. So black played d6. I castled, still sort of keeping my options open. And then black played queen d7, which on the face of it looks quite odd, but black's going for a setup with b6 and bishop b7 here, and he needs to defend the knight on c6 before he can do that. So fairly logical. I decided to respond with A3. So while Black's playing B6, Bishop B7, I want to try and get something going with B4, try and create an initiative on the queen side.
Matthew, can I ask a question?
Yep.
What are the prior to A3?
Yep.
What are the pros and cons of white going E4? Is that just another type of position?
Yeah, it's it would just lead to quite a very different sort of game. I think E4 here. I think Black set up quite well to face it. That he's already got quite good control of the D4 square, which is going to be the key for this position. If white can get a knight on an outpost on D4 quite comfortably, these positions can just end up being quite bad for white. So yeah, it is just another way of playing the position, but I wouldn't mind being black here. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to play E4, you really want the knight on E2 rather than F3.
Exactly that as well.
Yeah.
And I think Black's quite well set up where he hasn't committed the G8 knight and play E6 knight E7 against it.
Exactly. Exactly that. Yeah, and it will just if Black never gives up a D4 square, the setup with C4 and E4 just doesn't make a lot of sense, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there are definitely other ways I could. If I didn't play with A3, I'd probably play D3 myself here. Again, trying to stay non-committal, but the way I'm going to play this is almost always going to involve A3 and B4, I think.
And Rook B1, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after A3, Black.
In the style of Tony Costin.
Yeah, no, that what his book, The Dynamic English, was what got me to start playing the English. Actually,
yeah.
It's probably one of the more important books I've read in terms of how I developed as a chess player. To be honest,
it's a very good book.
Yeah. So and after B6, I don't actually need to play with Rook 1 here. I can just go B4 straight away. Because of the tension on the long diagonal, Black can't take twice on B4 here. Instead, playing Bishop B7, which makes a lot of sense.
Can you just put that on the board for the benefit of, because there are some,
of course, yeah,
people on this call that might not see all
so
that.
After C takes B4, A takes B4, Knight takes B4. Black's won a pawn, but he's also opened up the long diagonal, which has my bishop on one end and the black rook on the other. So now all I need to do is find a way to put the A8 rook under attack with tempo, and I think knight E5 is the easiest way to do that. Bishop takes E5, bishop takes A8. Maybe Black has some small compensation here, but it's quite close to just being material up for nothing, I think. I'm sure the engine will most likely agree. So from Black's point of view, it makes sense to just play Bishop B7, and now he's kind of threatened to take on B4 for real, which means I need to find a way of dealing with that. And yeah, my way of dealing with it was to just ignore it with Bishop B2. I remember thinking for quite a while at this time. I was already somewhat out of prep again. But my idea was, after Bishop B2, if Black plays C takes B4 and Knight takes B4, he has won a pawn, but I have a big lead in development. His knight on B4 is potentially weak, and sort of in the spirit of the Benko, I guess, I can use I have the open A and B files to try and use to create some pressure. And I also had the center after D4. So I would have been quite happy if Black had gone in for this. But instead, after C takes B4, he just went E6. So you can see he's fully going for a sort of for a hedgehog-like position. So yeah, the next phase of the game I played was not great. I can't entirely remember why, but I just made a couple of quite bad decisions on the trot. Here I played B takes C5. I probably want to keep the tension in the position a bit longer with Rook B1, I think. Black still can't take on B, or doesn't really want to take on B4 for the same reasons. And after knight G7, knight E4 is a potential idea that might cause Black some issues. Trying to swap off the dark square bishops and exploit the dark square weaknesses. But instead, B takes C5, and then the very next move, Queen A4. I cannot remember why I played it. Queen C2, just a much better square for the queen. Keeps the B2 bishop defended, doesn't get in the way. But I guess these things happen. Rook FB1. My plan is always going to be to try and create some play on the queen side here. So in that respect, it makes sense. And then after castles, I played knight E4. The same idea as before. Try and swap the dark square bishops off. But I'd completely missed Black's response of E5, and I'd got to this position, which is, I think, almost everyone would agree is just a bit better for Black. My pieces aren't very well coordinated. Black has more space, arguably has the safer king. So I'm already in sort of damage limitation modes on move 13, being whites in the Varsity match, which is not a particularly, not where I would have chosen to be in any respect. But
the rook on A1 is not looking tremendous, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, once you get into this sort of one, and you obviously will get into these positions at some stage, just sort of keeping ahead, finding a solid plan, not getting lost in tactics, and just keeping calm is quite important. So I just retreat my knight back to C3. The one thing I have going for me is the fact that D5 square is quite weak. And after rook FD8, I can play knight D5 straight away. The idea is that after knight takes D5, C takes D5, queen takes D5, the discovery with knight E5 is quite strong. I think winning on the spot. So after knight D5, Black responds knight D4, which is again quite a good move. I have pretty much no choice but to swap the queens off here. And at this point, I now need to find some way of dealing with my knights on D5, and I decided to do that by playing E4. So we end up with this sort of structure. After all that time, we end up with this sort of structure anyway. It's quite an interesting one, this position. I think objectively, Black's a little bit better, but it's not easy for either side to play. It's a bit unbalanced, which is kind of what you want against a slightly weaker player. And the pawn structure especially is quite an interesting one to think about. In the short term, my entire center is quite vulnerable. Obviously, obviously, once I have time to play d3, it's less so. But in the short run, I have quite a lot of weaknesses there. But then in the long term, the main problem with pawn structure is actually Black's. That if I can play a4, a5, suddenly Black's queen side becomes very difficult to defend. So that's that sort of tension in my short-term weaknesses versus long-term strength. If I can get through the next couple of moves without something going horribly wrong, I should be set up for quite a nice endgame, basically. So Black plays knight takes d5 here. With all of that logic in mind, I think f5 was probably his best shot, just to try and create some weaknesses immediately before I have time to consolidate. And a possible line: bishop takes d4, c takes d4, d3, knight takes d5, c takes d5, rook e8, and it's obviously not in a vacuum, but in a vacuum, I prefer to have the two bishops versus a bishop and knight, especially when my bishop's a bit blocked in by pawns.
Can you go sort of knight g5 and rook c7 and?
Yeah, I think knight g5 would be my best shot here.
And then go rook c1 maybe.
Yeah, possibly the problem maybe Black plays
something
like bishop h6, and I get my knight on e6 and it looks nice there, but the rest of my position is a bit ugly. With my rooks especially, are just completely stuck basically.
How are you going to activate that light squared bishop?
At the moment, I think I need it in a purely defensive role. Say if he goes bishop a6, I can cover with bishop f1. The closest thing I had to an active plan here is probably something like a4 to a4 and a5. Try and justify my rooks being on a1 and b1. But yeah, without a doubt, Black is a little bit better here. I just need to find ways to try and muddy the waters, I guess. But instead, knight takes d5 gives me the chance to take back with the e-pawn, which is quite important to avoid all of those f5 ideas. And after rook e8, d3, knight takes, bishop takes. This is the sort of pawn structure I was aiming for. Everything in the centre is kind of under control, and all I need is one tempo to get a4, then a5 in, and Black's going to have some sort of pawn weakness on the queen side. I can easily see this sort of position can get away from Black quite quickly if he's not careful. So with that in mind, what do people think Black should play here?
f5.
F5, yeah. With the idea of sort of going e4 next move or something.
Yeah, f5, e4, yeah.
Yeah, I think Black needs an active plan quite quickly. I think f5 and e4 makes a lot of sense. Maybe something like f5, a4, e4. Maybe takes bishop g4 or something. Maybe. I think white has a reasonable edge here. I think.
Can you round that e pawn up then?
Exactly. I was thinking I can go
bishop e6 check and rook e1.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or trade bishops first.
Yeah, maybe bishop e6 check, bishop takes 7, rook e1. I need to be careful about ideas with bishop a6 and bishop takes c4, of course. But Black maybe has one too many pawn weaknesses here. And I think if he ever, after bishop e6 check, if he ever sacrifices the exchange there, I don't think he has enough compensation an exchange down. So I think f5 e4 is quite logical, but black
b5 and then
yeah,
a6
exactly.
if he doesn't take it.
Yeah,
kind of bolster, avoiding those problems on with the queenside pawn structure that you mentioned.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, black played with b5 here, and worst case scenario for black is that he ends up with the pawn structure he already would have had. But there's now some good chances for him to actively weaken my pawn structure in the center as well, and eventually undermine my passed pawn on d5. So I need to find a good way to react to this. What I chose was maybe a bit too complicated for its own good. I played bishop d1, and my idea was that at some stage I can activate the bishop on a4. Obviously, put the black rooks in a bit of danger. But black had a good response with bishop a6 to actively target my c4 pawn.
Yeah.
And going back with that in mind, I should have just retreated the bishop to g2. The move I want to play, bishop c3 here, doesn't work immediately. I think because e4 is quite strong for black, which is why I need to retreat the bishop in the first place. But g2 is just a much safer square. And after bishop a6, I can go bishop f1. Keep everything, all of my pawn structure well defended. Now I can play with bishop c3, double on the b file if I want to. And as long as I keep a protected passed pawn on d5, all exchanges in the position kind of favor me because you get closer and closer to that winning king and pawn ending. However, after b5, bishop d1, bishop a6, now my pawn structure is under quite a lot of stress. Bishop c3, rook b7. Here I felt the need I had to play c takes b5. Maybe I could have delayed it, but it was going to happen one way or the other. And then after rook takes b5, bishop a4, takes, rook d8, we get to this position. It's still equal material, but the obvious tension, I do have a passed pawn on d5 and pieces that can support it, but I'm also almost certainly going to lose the d3 pawn. So I think the only way I can play this is just give up d3, try and support my d5 pawn as much as I can, and hope that that's enough. Basically, we're both very short on time here. I think we both had maybe 15 minutes, possibly as low as 10, and that's to complete the following 15 moves up to move 40. So there's not really enough time to properly calculate lines for either side here. So a lot of it's going to just have to be instinct, to be honest. So I play bishop c6.
This looks like a position you could spend a lot of time calculating all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I think I remember spending just on this ending, spending about an hour with him after the game analyzing, and we still didn't really have a clue what was going on. So after bishop c6, black played bishop f8, which I think we were fairly unanimous was quite a big mistake. he was again probably trying to be too complicated for his own good. I think bishop takes d3 is just simplest. But after rook b7, this is not easy to calculate at all. Even putting it through the engine, it needs quite a while to fully work out what it thinks here. I think without a doubt, the white position is easier to play. That I just play bishop a5 next move, then d6 and d7, and maybe black can stop the d pawn. Maybe he can't, but in time trouble, when you're both in time trouble, being the aggressor in these sort of situations is so much more straightforward. Instead, after bishop f8, now it's my turn to try and be too complicated for my own good. I play bishop a5 here. Just bishop takes e5 here, I think is simple and strong.
Yeah.
Bishop takes d3, rook b7. The problem that black's faces is, I'm going to win the a7 pawn. There's not really anything he can do about that. But my bishops on c6 and e5 just work together very well and complement each other quite nicely. For example, the bishop on c6 protects the e8 square. The e5 bishop controls the b8 square, so the black rook can never really go active. And it's just very, very tricky to even suggest moves to black in this situation. He can't, if at any stage he tries to attack the d5 pawn, say bishop e4. I think bishop c7 is just good for me here. I would need to check it though. But overall it looks quite close to white just being a pawn up for nothing. But yeah, well, you'd need further analysis to properly show that one way or the other. Instead, after bishop a5, rook c8, bishop d7, rook a8. It's actually quite hard for me to make progress. And in fact, what I probably should do and what the engine recommends is just repetition with bishop c6. But I think I was never going to do that. So instead, I try and go for the win with bishop c7. But I think it's quite clear to just to see if I'm going if I've gone from c3 to a5 to c7 to maybe take on e5, how much time I've lost from that bishop a5 decision. And then sorry. So after bishop takes d3, rook e1, e4. Suddenly black's the one with pressure, and with a pass pawn that's potentially dangerous after, say, c4, c3, c2. I try f3 here. I think the line that I missed when I went in for this line was after d6. Can anyone see a strong follow up for black here?
Bishop d6.
Bishop takes pawn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bishop takes d6 followed by rook d8. Wins the piece back, and after bishop takes c5, rook takes d7, we would get our third opposite color bishop ending in 3 games. This one feels very difficult for white to defend just because of how weak my light squares are around my king. Perhaps an engine could defend this, but me with 3 or 4 minutes left and 7 moves to play definitely couldn't. So I had to find something else, so I decided that f3 was my best chance to complicate the position. When a5 here, I'm not sure why he didn't just go c4 straight away, but I guess I was lucky that he didn't, because a5 was sort of not a particularly useful move in the future positions.
Was he limbering up for rook a7, Matthew?
I think he was going for rook a7. Yeah, I think you're right. But he never really had time to do it. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's hard to really criticize given we're both playing with not much time left. So I play
What's wrong with your c takes f?
I think after e takes f, I think I was planning just king f2 here. And my thinking was that with control of the e file, things were maybe a bit better. Things were a bit better for me.
What about bishop e2?
Yeah,
bishop g4.
Yeah, I think that this might have been the line I was looking at, actually. Yeah,
it's just petering out, isn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, and if black's not careful, he'll stay a pawn up, but the d6 pawn is very quick. Sorry, the d5 pawn is very quick down the board. If he doesn't have the bishop takes d6 trick.
Matthew, instead of king f2, was rook e8 an idea? That works.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. Yeah, I think after rook e8 takes bishop g.
Oh, yeah.
It's.
Didn't see that.
Yeah, it's king f2, maybe bishop e4, and I have no idea what's going on, but it looks quite. I think
it looks rather unpleasant.
Right, I do, yeah.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah.
It's a good line, Colin.
Yeah.
But yeah, after king f2, I think I am probably threatening. I think I am threatening rook e8. So. But yeah, you can see the complexity of the lines even the sidelines.
Very sharp.
Not easy. Yeah. So yeah, so a5. Yeah, a5 at the time felt like a perfectly reasonable move.
It's about this time you'd like to reach for the adjournment envelope, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you ever adjourned a game, Matthew?
I don't think I have. I mean, it's sort of. It would be in this day and age. It's, I guess, virtually pointless, isn't it? But yeah. But yeah, so a5 now. Rook a7 is a strong threat for black. So I need to retreat one of my bishops, which I kind of want to do anyway, just because they're tactically vulnerable like that together. So I play bishop h3. Black plays c4. I play d6, which feels like the only move I can really play. c3. d7. And then bishop e7. So we both have like far advanced pass pawns. Both of them are going to be well protected on the second rank, on the 7th and 2nd rank. And then it's sort of quite almost, it will become close to mutual zugzwang in terms of neither side being able to make that much progress. So f takes e with very little time on the clock. F takes e4 was the obvious move from my point of view. c2 the obvious move from his point of view. And then I decided to go with e5. Two ideas behind this. At some stage, e6 will allow me to support my passed pawn, while also it opens up the long diagonal, and bishop g2 could be quite an annoying move for black to have to deal with. He probably has to play rook. He has to play rook f8 after that, probably.
Yeah, because it's probably worth explaining that bishop g2 means that black's got to sack his bishop for the d8 pawn.
Mm.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it's very, very hard to make sweeping statements here, just because everything's so sharp. Black plays bishop c5 check, and I play king g2 in response. So this was black's idea to prevent me from going bishop g2, I suppose. And then after king g2, he goes bishop takes a3. So letting me queen with d8, but allowing if he does that, then black can get c1 queen in.
It's quite a nice symmetry here, isn't it?
It is. So here I played what felt like the obvious move, just to queen with check. As we'll see in the last line of the game, I should have gone bishop takes a5 first, and after this, black queens I queen, and we have what should just be a dead drawn bishop ending. But playing bishop takes a5 first was quite an important detail. Instead, I go d8 queen first, takes, and my opponent plays c1 queen and offers a draw. But
play a4.
Yeah, exactly. Black has other options here besides just queening. Someone say a4.
Yeah.
So yeah, so black's winning idea here is going to involve. He needs to both make sure he wins my rook with his c pawn, and he prevents his a5 pawn from being captured.
So a4 bishop g5.
Yeah, I think if he goes a4 first, I think bishop g5 saves everything. Maybe black can still go bishop b2, a3, a2. Not 100% sure. But then after bishop b2, maybe I'll go e6 and defend it that way.
This is not an ending you want without an increment, is it? Really?
Exactly, yeah. Well, I suppose with bishop g5, you would reach move 40 at this point, so you'd be given an extra hour to work out what was going on.
So instead of a4 was a move bishop b4.
Yeah, exactly. The move,
and then bring the bishop round to d2.
Yeah,
or even on c3 if the book goes to a1.
Yeah. So after bishop b4, similar sort of idea to my bishop g2 thing a couple of moves ago. There are a few safe squares for me on the first rank.
Rook a1.
If I go rook a1, bishop c3, as you said, is very strong.
Yeah.
Eventually, and if I ever put my rook on c1, the idea is bishop d2, rook a1, and a4. And
nasty.
Yeah. And at this stage, c1 queen will win the rook back, and then he'll have this distant passed a pawn, which should be more than enough to win the bishop ending. Yeah. And yeah. So rook c1 doesn't work. Rook a1 doesn't work to bishop c3. What about rook g1? What does black play here?
Bishop e4 check.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, bishop e4 check. I have two moves with my king. King f1 leads to an immediate promotion, and king f2, bishop c5 check is not a lot better.
Just skewer. Yeah.
So
Ouch.
it's yeah.
So he missed a win.
He missed a win with his final. He missed a win and offered a draw with the same move. Yeah.
Oh.
I
How
think
much time did he have left at that point?
I think he offered a draw with less than 30 seconds on the clock. So I think, yeah, it's.
Off, did you?
Sorry.
You bit his hand off.
Yes. Well, I hadn't seen any line like this at all because I didn't have any time either. But it felt dangerous.
So you had hardly any time to contemplate the draw offer. You just took it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, lucky that. Yes, I mean,
yeah, tough game.
It is a dead draw, but yeah, it was
very sharp.
Yeah, and yeah, it sort of started out as what I hoped it was going to be sort of a nice technical win with that in that pawn structure with that endgame, but b5 complicated everything a lot. I maybe didn't react perfectly to it. But then, yeah, the crazy complications and maybe my lack of experience with non-increment time controls, just because everything has an increment nowadays, makes it quite hard to play these sharp endings when suddenly the increment's taken away from you.
I think you should be forced to play a tournament with analog clocks and no increments, and just to know what it was like for the previous generation.
Yeah.
Just wondering whether the flag was going to fall when you still had a minute left.
Yeah, and you have to use descriptive notation.
Yeah. Well, that was a tremendous game, wasn't it? Yeah,
yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Exciting.
Yeah, all the way through.
Thank you.
Thank you,
what do you have
Matthew.
to do to become a GM? Tell us the next stages for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as you said in the intro, I have one norm so far, from the 4NCL 2019 season, I think.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm now I'm now at the stage where I can sort of go for GM norms in the sort of the closed tournaments that have been popping up in the country over the past couple of months. So trying to get the last couple of norms at those, and then Hastings, the London Classic if it happens. There's a lot of chess to be played without even going abroad nowadays, which has not been the case. Well, certainly with FIDE rated stuff, and certainly norm tournaments hasn't been the case for certainly most of my life. So hopefully play a few of those tournaments and see what happens.
What's happening with Gibraltar? Do you know, Matthew? Is it? Because Stuart's come back to London, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I've never, because it has never fit up with term dates for school or university. I've never played it. But,
I think they're having something in Gibraltar, but it's not a big Swiss.
Okay.
No.
It might be the equivalent of the dance, the ladies versus the veterans. I'm not saying that's what it'll be, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
There is something happening, but it's as much for novelty.
Sure.
Yeah, in fact, they're rebuilding the Coletta Hotel. They're knocking it down and rebuilding it as a Hilton.
Oh.
So I think the venue's going.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Well, for a year or two anyway.
That could be a problem.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, before you do that, thank you very much, Matthew.
You might as well stop sharing. Let's go back to a multi-screen.
Sorry, yeah, you can stop sharing. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Matthew. I mean, it was great to have that. And I think the 150 years, you said 100 years or so, it's nearly 150 years, isn't it, the Varsity match? I mean, it's a great statement that it's the oldest chess match. And, why wouldn't we celebrate that and keep promoting that? It's a fantastic thing, and some great games there. And personally, thank you for my point of view for the level that you pitched it at, because it was very, very understandable, and I think for people of many different levels could understand it. Because sometimes they're pitched too high, and other times they're too fast or whatever. But I thought the balance was right. I enjoyed that. And the last game, I mean, I can't believe how you were both in time trouble, and that was the reason. But how complex it is, and how important it is to play the right moves. And the second, third, or fourth best move still made an exciting game. But actually, most of us play moves that are the second or third or fourth best move, and that's our best move, and you're doing that under time pressure, and you get a great game. It's really interesting to watch. So thanks very much again.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.